Bonjour, and welcome to the Red Lake Nation College Gikendaasowin podcast, a RLNC space to discuss topics on culture and language, history, community happenings, student spotlights, and more. This week in the studio, we have Red Lake Nation College Life Vision Coach Bonnie Ekstrom and RLNC Community Connections Program Coordinator Shelly Knight speaking with some of the staff at Equay Wiigamig on October 28, 2022. Red Lake Nation College would like to thank the National Endowment for the Humanities for their generous support in the creation of this podcast. We hope you enjoy this podcast. Miigwech.
Bonjour, Gikendaasowin. Good morning. So today we are here with Equay Wiigamig, and they are the Red Lake Women's Shelter. And I'm Shelly Knight. I work with Red Lake Nation College Community Connections Program.
And I'm Dr. Bonnie Ekstrom. I'm the Life Vision Coach, counselor for the college, as well as adjunct faculty in psychology. So welcome today. This month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we have several speakers here in our podcast room to talk about the women's shelter services available to us. We'd like you to just briefly introduce yourselves. Just tell us a little bit about what you do at the program or what your title is.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Smith. I'm the program manager for the Equay Wiigamig.
Hello, I'm Emma Kingbird. I am the JAG advocate, and I'm stationed over at the Gikendaasowin building.
Good morning. I'm Athena Bug. I am the data coordinator as well as a women's advocate at the shelter.
Hello, I am Ryan Kingbird. I am the legal advocate, and I am stationed over at the tribal courts.
Good morning. I am Tori Kingbird. I am the director of Equay Wiigamig.
So welcome to all of you. We have a lot of really good questions that we want to pose to you. We're really trying to get this information out to the public, to our community, and to let them know the amazing services that you guys have available to them. So one question I have for you, just to kind of start it off, is what's the first thing that happens when somebody calls you for services, for help, or calls the crisis line at the shelter?
So what we do is establish if it's an emergency or not. There's a caller screening process with a series of questions to see if somebody needs law enforcement, if they're injured, needs an ambulance, or if they just want to talk and receive supportive services. Sometimes it helps just to have someone listen, and those seeking assistance end up realizing they already know what they need to do, and it helps to just say it aloud.
A lot of the time, the women do just call to vent, really. I think they're aware of the situation they're in, and, they know that it is abuse that's happening, but I don't think they're ready to take a step forward to leave the situation. So a lot of the time, women and men call just to vent about the situation. I think it feels good for them just to talk about it, and maybe almost empowers them to hear that they're not crazy, they're not making all this up. It helps them talking about it, and maybe does empower them, so maybe they will leave the situation sooner rather than later. But
that kind of leads a little bit into a question I had about a few years ago. We interviewed the shelter, and they mentioned a need for domestic violence care for men as well. And you just mentioned that you also serve men. How does this work with your program?
So domestic violence is not gender specific. So, men do need assistance as well. And we are able to offer assistance if it's needed.
Just adding on to that too, we do have the Gikendaasowin program, which is a separate building. We do have men's nights. We have male advocates as well. They're the Red Cloud advocates or the Panema advocate. They usually hold men's nights, or you can go talk to them. And, we have a separate time. Usually our activities for men only, just like the moccasin game. That usually a lot of people come in together for that, where they just need to get away, play some game, talk to, guys, or we have the drum group. It's not only female, and it's for everybody.
Great. So how long have you guys, maybe tell us a little bit about just how long you've been established in the Red Lake community, kind of the history a little bit.
The Equay Wiigamig Women's Shelter was established in February of 1997. So this past February, we crossed the threshold of 25 years of serving men, women, and children.
So I've only been at the shelter since January actually. But I work a little more closely with the women at the shelter because I started as a relief staff. So I was at the shelter 4 days a week, and now as the data coordinator, I'm more over at the Wellstone building, but I am also still a women's advocate, so I do work at the shelter.
Sure. So when someone's in a domestic violence situation, are there certain legal matters that occur?
Yes. At the Red Lake courts, we have a legal advocate and a domestic violence prosecutor. They're both stationed over there. The legal advocate can help someone, walk through, the court process and the filing and all of that when it comes to order for protections and restraining orders. And we can also connect this person to other resources like lay advocates or legal services or representation.
So you talked about being able to serve men and women, but I'm assuming the shelter is mostly for women and children. So what happens if you reach full capacity?
When we're at full capacity, we do try to offer other services or get them into another shelter somewhere. A lot of the time, the calls we get on the crisis line are from a far distance, like the cities, the Fargo, So if we are at full capacity and, based on their location, we try to find something closer to them. We just offer resources that can help them, get somewhere else or get to safety if we're unable to accept them at that time.
I think that's really cool that that number is available. Basically, it sounds like everywhere. People are calling you from everywhere, and you can connect them with different resources where they're calling from.
Yeah. There are members within the community that, end up at the shelter. But so in the past, we were able to make space available and have 1 to 2 families to a room. But with the pandemic, the new guidelines, we aren't allowed to do that. And so we aren't as accommodating, but we do try to offer them other resources based on their location closer to home, because we do get calls coming in from all over. We have a database that we're connected to called Day One, which was established by late Senator Paul Wellstone and his wife Sheila. It lets us know where there is space available geographically in the state of Minnesota and the largest family size that they can take in. Once those resources are gone through, we suggest homeless shelters if they don't have supportive family members who can take them in. So we do our best to provide other resources and services when we aren't able to accept the victim.
Yeah, so you mentioned new COVID policies. So how did COVID impact the shelter, and how have you resumed some of those services then?
COVID-19 impacted so many things. We're communal living space that had a playroom that was filled with toys. We had space for group activities, and the guidelines that came out for congregate living really limited how we were even able to interact, transport, accept into the shelter, house our residents. We ended up having to close 2 of our rooms for living space due to 3 rooms sharing a bathroom. It's been slow starting back up with full-blown groups. We have instances where we continuously have to shut down parts of the house or quarantine due to the virus.
So even though we are, getting back to more normal living, we still are after the pandemic, everything's changed. Our social norms have changed. So we do still go into quarantine in the shelter where the women and children are in their rooms for a 5-week or 5-day period just for safety reasons. If someone was exposed, we just quarantine the shelter just to prevent further exposure.
I think it's really neat that you can connect with other resources in the state of Minnesota through that Wellstone project you talked about and know where things are available.
The Day One program. So shelters all throughout the state of Minnesota, they like log in how many beds they have, how many beds are filled, and that's updated daily. And we get those updates. So if we aren't able to house someone, we can try to help them find somewhere that can. And if that doesn't work out, then we do have other resources like homeless shelters and stuff like that.
So speaking of just capacity of the shelter, how many families, women and children can you actually house there?
Our shelter is licensed for it to be a 12-bed facility, but we do go over capacity because, there'll be 4 women that come in and, we can't say, oh, you can only bring 2 of your kids. Like, we're not gonna, no, you gotta leave 1 kid out. Sorry. So we do go over capacity and we try to work with them. And we've always worked with our neighboring shelters in order to ensure our victims and those seeking safety have a safe place to go.
Yeah, so earlier you mentioned some programs for men, and they sounded like some cultural programs. In general, what kind of cultural programming does the shelter offer clients?
Whatever is asked of us, we do our best to make connections for the residents community, people who reach out. If we don't have the answer, we do our best to help them get them. The pandemic had many people reaching out for medicines, antiviral and antibacterial teas, immune boosters, and our staff was able to gather what was available in our region, and the staff for Giwata delivered teas from Leech Lake, Bemidji, and connected to people through all 4 districts on the reservation. So Giwata program is, we do provide cultural prevention activities, we do a lot of sewing. I know the men play moccasin game, which is a cultural game for men, and we hold weekly sessions. We try to bring the clients over from the women's shelter, get them out of there, get some hands-on activities. We go out and forage for, medicines and berries. We try to do a lot of cultural-based stuff for the community, our clients, and we try to kind of have it like an escape, where they can, talk to people and just kind of relax culturally.
Sounds amazing. So the shelter is kind of that crisis mode and covers a period of time. I'm not sure how long your clients are allowed to stay.
So we do have kind of like a 30-day stay rule, but it's not necessarily like really enforced. If the women are moving in the right direction, they're trying to get housing set up, they're trying to get out of the shelter, we're not gonna just kick them to the curb at 30 days, If they're trying to better themselves and better their lives, like, we will work with them. During the pandemic, I personally wasn't at the shelter, but I know during the pandemic, there was women that were there for like the whole year. They had nowhere else to go, and being that we were in a pandemic, they just stayed at the shelter. But so now that things are kind of going back to normal, not really, but they are new normal. We are trying to get women to get going in the right direction and trying to establish their new life out of their domestic situation they were in before.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me to this other question about these women are trying to kind of reestablish their lives and find some new direction for it. So what kind of support do they have, like, to relocate? And even while it's kind of a big question. I guess I'll just start there. What kind of support, social services support, whatever, that is available to them to get that kind of help, to make those connections for resources?
At the shelter, the advocates do help with like housing applications, and it's not the easiest to get into housing around here. So a lot of the time they go off reservation and get into like Section 8 housing or the HUD housing program. that's what most of the women do a lot of the time. And it isn't the fastest process, but I've seen some women like get it accomplished and get into housing from the shelter within like a couple of months' time. So it is doable.
So, to your question, there's a lot of things that our women's advocates do at the shelter. They take them to their housing, get housing applications in. They take them to do job searches. We'll even like take them to different communities. Like I think Beltrami County is part of Black Duck, or Black Duck is part of Beltrami County. So a lot of people don't know like the area. So if they're on HUD or they can get HUD things, we'll take them over to Black Duck just so they can see the community, because a lot of people don't know the surrounding communities other than Red Lake or Bemidji. But our women's advocates do a lot, even the JAG advocates. I'm super proud of everybody.
Yeah, I agree. Beltrami County is large and covers a lot of territory. And yeah, Shelly has another question about.
Yeah, so if the shelter has school-age children, how does the program ensure they're safe? And do they attend schools outside the shelter?
They do. We don't have a school right at the shelter, so they do have to go to school. We've had residents that have children go off the reservation for school, and sometimes somebody will come and pick them up, or we'll bring them to their bus stop in the morning. If there is a person that's licensed to drive, one of our program vehicles. So we work with them as much as we can. We want those kids to go to school, to stay in school, so we don't want our ladies to get in trouble for not sending them to school. So we're going to do everything that we can to help them with their kids' education. So
I would just like to hear anything that, we've asked you some kind of really pointed questions, but this is your program. If there's other things you'd like to tell us, we really want the community educated. We want them to know what these services are, how amazing your program is, and the kind of help that you do in this community. So if there's other things you'd like to add, I'd really appreciate hearing that.
Well, the Women's Shelter it's for everybody. And Women's Shelter has extensions, such as the Giwata program. It's not only, domestic violence is not gender specified. So they, them, we're open to anybody. Giwata program, you can just come in, just hang out, talk. We have a lot of services, and we definitely want to make everyone feel welcome and, just be more culturally connected. And Giwata is like, I always have trouble saying it. Giwata Gikendaasowin, circle of family. So we definitely want to make it like a family connection with everybody, so they're open to talk, open to, vent, because we have a lot of that. And we're going to be there for you no matter what.
I just want to remind women and men that are out there, them that are out there currently in a domestic violence situation, that there are people there to help. They're here to help. We're here to help, whether it's getting you out of the situation or just hearing you out.
Make mention of the Giwata Gikendaasowin program. I hear a lot of times people referencing it as the sister program to the shelter. It is not a sister program. It's an extension. It's our community-based programming. So we can have people at the building. It used to be at the Wellstone House, but we outgrew the Wellstone House. It is now our administrative building. So we have the Giwata House for those community functions that are happening. And we don't have to always check. They don't always have to ring the buzzer at the gate to be let in and out. For community groups, for community education, for community cultural events that are going on.
Before I was the director, I was the legal advocate, and I was over at the courts, and I did a lot. I worked a lot with victim services, and they're another program that's very helpful for our survivors that come through our program. But Ryan, she She's there for support, to walk through the process, like when you come in, what happens, through how it gets served, how it goes to the judge, and then how it goes to the police, and then it'll come back to the judge, and then, she's there to help people understand the process, and she's there for moral support. She can go into the courtroom with our survivors, but she cannot there and, plead their case for them because it is a civil procedure. So most times the petitioner and the respondent will go in there and they'll just plead their own case. So she's there for moral support and to help the victim survivors through the process.
I think that's really critical to have somebody by your side that's supporting you, because the legal system can seem a bit daunting and a little scary at times. So I think that's an amazing part of your program that you offer that kind of support.
I was kind of wondering, so for a victim to come to a shelter, I imagine it's got to be quite intimidating. I was wondering if there's a way to maybe remove that fear by kind of describing that first day for someone seeking shelter, like who are they maybe seeing first, or what are they doing? Could one of you describe that?
So when they get there, we kind of like to let them get settled into their room. They're going through a traumatic experience. We do have an intake process that we have to go through, but it is a lot of questions, and it is about domestic violence. And, I think them coming to the shelter and leaving their situation is kind of a big step forward to take. So I personally like to let them get settled in, and when they're ready to do intake and answer all these questions and talk about their situation, I like to let them be ready and come to us, because it's not easy to talk about for them. And I think giving them that time to get settled in and feel welcomed in the shelter, because they're coming to a new home, so I think it's a little easier for them to do it in their own time. I mean, we do have to get it done, but I don't like to pressure them into all the paperwork and the paperwork side of everything. But they come in, bring in their belongings, we get them settled into a room. If they need hygiene items, we provide that, get their room set up for them. And sometimes they'll come in late at night, so we'll wait till the next day to do intake and kind of just let them relax a little bit, try to anyway, as best as they can in the situation that they're currently in.
I would also like to say that a lot of the times some of our women don't come with anything. I mean, they're leaving a situation and, what are you going to grab? Your kids and maybe jacket and shoes or something, but sometimes they don't have anything. But we have at the shelter, we try to have a donation pile of clothes that, will fit hopefully somebody in their family. We try to have baby stuff all the way up to an adult. That's our main, I don't want to say our main thing that we need, but yeah, a lot of the times our survivors, victims don't come in with anything. So we try to have some clothing available to them. They want, new underwears and new socks and, and we can provide that for them, we on a limited kind of scale, but, we do have those when they leave. We like to try to, if they're going to a new home, we try to have maybe a little package available to them, of pots and dishes and cups and cleaning supplies or garbage bags, something that they need for when they're starting their new home. I'd like to say that too, is that, our donation pile is a little small, but it gets them something until we can get them something else, because there is a process.
So that kind of, you sort of answered it, but are there ways that people can donate to the shelter and provide those kind of things that you're talking about?
Whatever donations people feel like they can contribute. Many things residents appreciate is new socks, new undergarments, a hairbrush, hair ties, zip-up sweatshirts, sweatpants. If they're injured, they're going to want to try to get out of clothing a lot easier, like zip-ups. Basically, any comfort item that you feel you may want. Having to be away from your home, monetary donations are also appreciated. Sometimes when people relocate and we put them on the bus, they need money for their baggage fees. Our staff has been very giving and have normally just paid the fees on their behalf.
So we appreciate any donations in any form, really.
We do have limited space, but I mean, anything helps for somebody that doesn't have anything, so.
If there are any mattress stores out there that want to donate some new beds, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, all that we ask is that if anybody's going to come and donate, that it would be like during the business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, just so our day staff is there, because we do have a lot more, like the admin, me, Sherry, our data coordinator, and a lot of our JAG advocates are only there during the day, and we always ask them for help. If we need help hauling something, we'll have the guys come over. So if we get donations, I mean, it's easier during the day rather than having our evening or weekend staff take on that task.
Even just like regular, Giwata handles a lot of fabric. We do get donations through that as well. But whatever helps, we have people come over and make shirts. So anything really helps, even quilt products, and we have people make blankets and
Well, thank you so much for telling us about the shelter. I think it is so important that people in the community really know more about how they can help the advocates, but also seek services at the shelter. And it's just been really great getting to talk with you guys today, putting a voice with the program and making it very, more approachable for those who might not be familiar with the shelter. And Miigwech, we're really appreciative.
Thank you for having us.
Miigwech.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Join us as we listen to RLNC Assistant Grant Writer Jasmine Gonzalez interview the Director of Agriculture in Red Lake, Sherilyn Spears. Giga Wabamin. Miigwech to the following for their efforts in the creation of this Red Lake Nation College Gikendaasowin podcast episode. Opening and closing music by Director of Equity, Culture, Education, and Archives, Floyd Buck Jourdain. Opening, introduction, and closing by Red Lake Nation College podcast intern, Natea Neto. Host this episode, Dr. Bonnie Ekstrom and Shelly Knight. Guest speakers, Emma Kingbird, Athena Bug, Tori Kingbird, and Ryan Kingbird. Production by IT Director Josh Nelson and RLNC student Rebecca Peterson. And a special thanks to the National Endowment for the Humanities for their generous support.